Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's weekly Wednesday webinar hosted by FunMobility. Today's topic, mobile advertising, tools and tactics. We're going to talk about some of the targeting and audience building techniques that we use here at FunMobility and some of the tools and considerations you should use for your next campaign as well. My name is Kevin Almeida. I'm a mobile marketing strategist with FunMobility. I'm joined here today with guest host Matthew Summers. Matthew is the Advertising Operations Manager for FunMobility. He's personally handled nationwide campaigns for some of our big clients, including Chiquita, Comcast, and PepsiCo, which we'll be talking about in today's presentation. A recording of this presentation will be made available to everyone who registered tomorrow morning. You should be getting that in an email, whether or not you were able to attend. And we're going to hold questions, as usual, to the end of the presentation. This will be about probably a 25-minute presentation, and then we'll open it up to 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the very end. Also, just real quick, next week, don't miss out. We're doing another topic, which is going to be a mobile-first CRM. So we're going to talk about loyalty strategies, database strategies, how to use some of the same principles we're applying here towards that paid media side, that initial interaction you're having with your audience, and converting them to an owned audience that you can market to for a much lower cost per engagement. So a little bit about us. FunMobility connects brands and audiences through fun and engaging digital marketing. You can see some sample of our brands that we work with here and some of the awards that we won. And we're going to get into the details of what does that actually mean. So yeah, that actually means, of course, doing media strategy, media buying, but also focusing on the post-click, which is we found to be a really important part of the consumer engagement piece that's often overlooked. Today's agenda, we're going to start off going through a real-world example. This is a Super Bowl campaign that was just recently run for PepsiCo. Then we're going to talk about targeting an ideal audience, some considerations for how you can use these tactics to increase sales. And lastly, Matt's going to go through how this all works, beginning to end, what are all the considerations, so really laying it out, what everything is and what's on the table. And then, of course, we'll open it up to questions. So let's start. So real-world example, Matt, what can you tell us about this PepsiCo campaign?
So the PepsiCo campaign came to our attention. They were working with one of their channel partners, and they wanted to help both themselves and their channel partners kind of grow their database, specifically the email database of their channel partners, which, like Kevin had mentioned, will be a topic discussed in next week's webinar. And so they had partnered with their channel partner to do a promotion about promotions for discounted products or services, food, for example.
So basically the campaign was, to give people a little bit of context, there was after clicking on a banner ad or search ad, people would be taken to a fun little spinner game that was a web-based HTML5 gamified promotion, and people spun the spinner and they could get all kinds of different prizes, and those prizes were coupons of all different values. So you had some really high value coupons like get a free pizza, which obviously everybody wants to get that free pizza, and then you had lower value coupons that were like, get a free soda with, purchase, things like that. And so by having these high value offers that only a select few people got, we were able to incentivize people to provide their email address.
Exactly.
So we're able to actually grow the channel partner's email database on Pepsi's behalf for this.
Exactly. And so the goal was to, again, get them to engage with the brand, which was the immediate post-click, and then once they were just shown the prize that they won based on that gamified HTML5 spinner, in order to claim their prize, they were required to opt into the Pizza Club, which would give them future deals for the same channel partners.
All right. So it was a fun campaign, but let's talk about the media buy here. Let's talk about the actual advertising piece. What were we doing to help Pepsi and their channel partners reach the right audience?
Well, so with something like this, it was really nice and really easy because everybody loves free pizza. So who doesn't, right? So especially when the Super Bowl's coming up, if you're having a Super Bowl party, pizza is just usually a pretty solid go-to snack. So when we initially launched the campaign, we did some very broad targeting. People that like pizza is in the hundreds of millions, I'm sure. So when we initially launched, very broad targeting, but then it came down to watching and learning who was engaging and who was completing the entire process to coupon redemption. And then, obviously, we'd like to have an integration into the POS system to do actual redemptions in store, but people that actually clipped the coupon or sent it to their email or sent it to their own text or to their I forget what the iPhone.
Right. It was Passbook now.
Exactly.
But let's pull back a step here. So that you just said a lot of really interesting stuff. So we started off targeting very broadly. So it was by interest category. It was by keyword. It was by demographic. It was by site context. And I talked to a lot of clients, and even a lot of other agencies. To them, that's audience targeting. And it is. To a certain point, you want to put your best foot forward when you're starting a campaign. So for this, people who like pizza, people who live near a participating retail location. But that's not the whole story. That is just the very first piece of the story. And if you leave it at that and say that's our targeting, that's kind of leaving most of the actual work not undone.
Exactly.
And where you're really going to see the as Matt was saying, where you're really going to see performance turnaround in a media campaign happens during the optimization process. It happens in this ongoing where you're following people and you see all these unknowables, things you wouldn't know in a vacuum until you actually start the campaign. Days of the week, hours of the day, specific geographic areas that are performing higher than others, specific audiences or demographics that are performing higher than others, or weird combinations thereof. We'll find things that you would just never even think would actually be a trend, and then it'll really affect the performance of a campaign, like men are more interested in engaging with a product on Wednesdays, women more interested in engaging with a product on Thursdays. It sounds ridiculous, but then when you actually look at the national campaign, you look at the numbers, and you plug it in, performance goes up.
Absolutely.
And so that's the important part is sometimes the data is smarter than you can ever really be. So you put your best foot forward at the beginning, but then it's very important to watch the numbers.
Exactly.
As the campaign goes.
So we had also, we worked with Pepsi to build the audience. So we had audience building pixels on the post-click engagement, so that as they were engaging and converting on this landing page is when we started to get these additional data points, and then we can take those attributions such as sports or beachgoers or dog lovers or music lovers, etc., and see which of those groups were more likely to convert, and then we could adjust our spend to target those groups in a retargeting campaign that came a little bit closer to the Super Bowl, reminding people that this coupon was out there and they should use it and redeem it before the Super Bowl.
Right. So if we're looking at this from the big picture, you've got your first level of audience targeting, which is demographic, keyword, channel, context, etc.
Exactly.
Then you've got campaign optimization, and then you've got the next, what you just laid out, phase 2, the next campaign. Take what we learned, take the audiences we captured, take the cookies that we created from people who didn't convert, and then serve another campaign based on what you've learned. So that's really the 3-step process that we're going to, and it becomes a cycle. Because each campaign feeds more business intelligence, more audience information, more audience capture into the next campaign, and each campaign increases value, and you wind up with really a lot of lifetime, long-term value, much higher than if you just focus on this short term of I'm going to target a person, give them an offer, and get some short-term, sales from that offer in the immediate. And this campaign was a big success. We had a huge engagement on the post-click. 94% of post-click traffic played this game, was engaged, was having fun. And then even though there was that email gate where you had to provide personal information, you had to give your name and email in order to access your coupon prize at the end, 30% were willing to do that.
Yep.
So of all the clicks, you had an almost 1 in 3 people who were clicking on this banner ad were coming into the email database.
Exactly. And we could also attribute which deals were the ones that got the highest opt-in. So this helps Pepsi and their channel partners assess which deals they should promote and how to promote them to either increase an opt-in rate or increase cart size, etc. So being able to attribute which deals get the most feedback. I mean, obviously the free pizza had almost 100% opt-in rate.
That's the big carrot, the big grand prize.
Exactly. But
not everybody wins that.
If you have, a buy one pizza, get a second half off, that's converting better than a, buy one pizza, get free breadsticks, it helps them when they're planning out their future coupons and they're able to attribute that kind of stuff.
All right, so getting a business intelligence. So let's now break this down into constituent pieces here. So let's talk now a little bit about audience targeting. So if we're talking about building an audience for a client, And that's building an owned audience of Optimus, but also building an online audience, someone, segments that we can reach. We do that with a variety of different channels. A lot of this is pretty common sense stuff. You got your digital display, mobile web, mobile in-app, desktop. You've got your paid search, paid social media, which Facebook in particular is doing all kinds of exciting things with their new ad units and their targeting. And then you've got retargeting campaigns, so people who come in and do different actions or don't do different actions with a landing page or a website, you can retarget them with different promotions. And then you've got what we call digital engagement direct mail, which we'll get into in a little bit, which is actually targeting people on a household level, not an IP address, like buying IP addresses, but actually ingesting a list of offline physical addresses and then targeting digital ads to that list of physical addresses, so you can do things like match with your print mailing list. So let's go into, we're targeting. So we said how you start off, you don't really know your audience. You have your ideas about your audience. You have your research you've done beforehand. You're really putting your best foot forward, but you don't really know your audience yet. So why am I looking at a little boy right now?
So, when you talk about you don't really know your audience, it partly can be a two-way street where your audience doesn't really know you. So this relationship between you and your audience is really at a very young stage. There are conclusions that you can draw based on your normal corporate web traffic, or people that are coming into your store, or people that are shopping online. But when it comes to specific promotions and putting certain types of ads out there, starting off at its infancy and then using those data points that we gather from that first step of that three-step process that Kevin was talking about is how you start to grow that relationship and learn more about your customers, as well as your customers learning more about yourself.
Right. So the reason we have a picture of a cute little boy here with a tablet, at least I think that's a tablet, it may just be a large phone and
very large phone,
a very small child, this is your audience profile, and we're not literally saying you're targeting children. We're saying that the profile itself hasn't matured.
Exactly.
So if your audience profile, your targeting criteria was a person at the beginning, when all you have is demographic data, interest data that you're plugging in your third-party data that you've bought from your data partners, you still are. That audience profile is a child. Yes. That is not your fully matured audience.
Yes.
And then as you continue to collect things like, which devices are performing, you start getting actual personal identifier information, like their personal interests, their email, their phone number. You can connect it with purchase history data if you have a loyalty promotion, you're a retailer. Things like intent, their spending habits. You can also look at their online activity. When are they engaging with promotions? When are they not? You create different audience personas. It's a lot of work, but as you do this, you start to put together different audience profiles that you can optimize your spend towards and make sure you're really hitting people that are really going to perform. And at the end of the day, that little boy, that little immature audience that you through what you could, you put your best foot forward, push that little boy out into the world. That little boy is now matured into your final audience, which is male model over here on the right-hand side with his phone. And the idea basically being now you really understand your audience.
Yes.
You're able to market to them in a way that is where you're backed by data, you're backed by real information, and that's going to increase your performance.
Exactly.
Now let's talk a little bit about digital engagement direct mail. I mentioned this earlier. So the idea here is it doesn't use cookies. It actually uses offline data. This is a recent capability that FunMobility just acquired, where we can target household level. So if you have, say, you send print circulars, coupon circulars, or a print mailer, depending on different verticals, we can actually target digital ads to the house. So you're combining the targeting of a direct mail campaign, a print mail campaign, with all this interactivity and data capture and engagement of a digital campaign. And it's only a fraction of the cost of sending a postcard, obviously, because you don't have to pay shipping and printing. There's no physical postcard to send, so it's just the cost of the audience and the targeting. And we price that on a CPM or a household basis. And to me, I think the coolest thing about this is if you have good audience data on your point of sale system. So say if you have a loyalty card or a good newsletter, and you're actually able to attribute purchase to a household, you can then look at ads served to those households. And you can draw a straight line. You have closed loop reporting on which households are served these ads, and then what was the trend of increased sales and revenue and intent to purchase and rate of conversions coming from those households. So that was a very cool feature.
Yes.
Now let's talk about how we actually increase sales. So the first step when you're looking at increasing sales is, especially on mobile ads, is focusing on that mobile mindset. So many people, they approach digital advertising and mobile advertising in particular like it's just a digital version of print advertising. Like your end goal is just have a pretty picture that people see. And hey, pretty pictures are great and all. I like pretty pictures as much as the next person, but you've got to really look at this is a different context. People engage with their phones in a different way than they're going to engage with a billboard, or in a different way that they're going to engage with a desktop ad. They are in short, goal-oriented bursts of activity. They are accomplishing a goal. More often than not, when someone's on their phone, they're accomplishing a specific goal. They're not browsing. And so they need immediate results, faster connectivity, something that's social. What are they doing? They're searching, they're sharing, they're engaging. They want to be entertained. They want to be connected, comforted. Instant gratification, big thing, instant gratification. So if you're offering some kind of incentive, you want them to instantly get some kind of gratification around that incentive. It needs to be really fast, low friction. And then what are they actually looking for on mobile? Well, we have these small, lightweight HTML5 content elements that we build. So in addition to your pre-click, where you've got your banner ad, on the post-click, you've got these interactive things that are brand content, games, prizes, and fun, like that spinner we were showing in the Pepsi campaign, offers and coupons that can have interactive or animated elements, and then data capture and CRM. So you're able to provide things like fun social media quizzes, surveys, or just form submissions so you can capture email, capture audience preferences. And you assemble these all like Legos and building blocks, and that's how you build these campaigns. That's how we do it. We do it very quickly and at scale for our clients, and that can just connect in the post-click. So kind of approaching, that's really the process we use to increase sales. What is their mindset? What do they want? What are the sales goals? And then putting in those pieces to create a campaign for the client, for their needs, for that audience that's going to convert, and it's going to actually affect the bottom line. All right, Matt, tell me how this all works. We got a lot of pieces here. We got the last 10 minutes or so of the presentation, and we're going to go kind of beginning to end. What are all the steps that we take when we're putting together what we think is the best kind of an ad campaign for a client?
So, to recap, this is obviously that three-step process, but it's still important to kind of step it by step. So, first step, campaign setup. You have those general assumptions, the high-level overview knowledge of your clients, of target customers, etc. So you set up your initial campaign with those criteria, targeting criteria in mind, and you launch. This is where you're going to be doing your geo-fencing around your certain locations, or if you have certain locations that you know from previous web histories that are high converting for your e-commerce site, you can target that here on the geographic side, and then you've got your third-party data layers from Lookalike, Experian, etc. You can throw those in there if you have a household income, a marital status, a number of children in the household, etc. that you think are applicable. And so you take all of those, you bundle those in with your creatives. It might be a good A/B test to do male-targeted creatives versus female-targeted creatives, so you can see which one's converting. And make sure that the people that are converting post-click on those are actually males and females. An interesting story. We actually had a Lowe's campaign that they were targeting men, but women were the most engaged audience. It was a very interesting campaign. We'll save that for another webinar. So you take this and you get your initial master plan all ready to go. And so then you launch and you let it, you let your sample size of this campaign start to grow over, depending on the size of it, a few days, weeks, months, etc. So then once that grows and you have enough of an engagement database of a sample size, that's when you start looking for those trends and those data points that start to build those micro clusters that Kevin had mentioned.
So to put it in a kind of what we've been talking about, once you've gotten this, you know what performance criteria, what your goals are with this. You've had your data from your third-party data, your content for the actual campaign, your creatives, your different creatives you're going to test, and what kind of inventory are you looking to fill, what geos you're looking to fill. That's when you've got that little boy.
Yes.
Right? We're looking at our master plan. This is the immature version of the audience targeting. This is just step one.
Yes.
You want to put your best foot forward. That's what this is. Now we're getting into step two, which is the campaign is actually live.
Yep. Campaign is live. You're starting to see engagements. You're starting to see conversions. And again, those micro clusters of, pet lovers or females on Wednesday nights, etc., those start to evolve and become these clusters that you can then bid factor against. So now bid factoring is where you start to notice those clusters, and on the different platforms or on even the different creatives that you see converting, you start to shift a little bit more budget so that those are winning more of the impressions, getting viewed more, and then obviously consequently driving higher conversion rates. So for each dollar that you push to those high conversions is then decreasing your cost per conversion overall, which is how the bid factoring works. So you take your behavioral clusters that you see, or the engagement data that you see from that post click. That's your input. You put that into Excel or what have you to really see what those pockets look like, get those data points, and what your output is, it should be, okay, so this creative or this geo or this gender or this age group or this interest category is converting better on this platform, this day of the week, this hour of the day, etc. So then you start shifting budget to those highest performing clusters, and then you start winning more inventory, getting that higher converting traffic to be engaged more, and then also to convert more.
That's so you get that desired up and to the right trend graph in your performance as you're
exactly.
That everybody wants.
And it's very common for a lot of people to just simply they start to see those conversions come in, and they're hitting their KPIs. The cost per conversion is where they targeted it to be, and they just leave it alone, not understanding that there are other steps you can take to get that cost per conversion down more and that engagement rate up higher.
Right. A digital ad campaign is not like a print campaign. It's a living thing.
Yes.
You want to watch it and babysit it, and make sure it's always doing the best that it can do.
Yep. Because even something as simple as weather patterns could change the conversion rate, because maybe your product is something that only people do in the sunshine, and for the next week it's raining. You need to take into account, well, maybe during a rainy day that this type of this type of audience is going to be converting more. So by babysitting, to go back to the little boy growing into the man, somebody needs to babysit him on the road to adulthood. You need to make sure that you're in constant contact with your campaigns. So this quote from Teddy Roosevelt, one of my favorites, is, at any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing, the next best thing is the wrong thing, and the worst thing that you can do is nothing. So by sitting there, your campaign is performing well, and you're just happy, and you don't want it to perform any better, you're really doing the worst thing. You aren't utilizing all of the data at your fingertips. At the very least, look at the data points, adjust your spend, and if it negatively reflects on your KPIs or performance, shift it back. At the very least, you learn something that maybe you didn't know before, but usually when you see those clusters evolve, by shifting budget toward those things, it right. does improve performance.
That can seem counterintuitive to marketers. Speaking for myself, a lot of time, as you would expect, the common sense, the pressure put on you is generate sales. Generate sales right now. That's what matters. That's what's real. But it's a little bit short-sighted to not look at the value of business intelligence for your brand, especially if you're doing something big and nationwide. The long-term value of audience capture, the long-term value of business intelligence, it's so easy to capture when you run a campaign like this, and it can be so valuable, not just to this current campaign, but to every campaign you run. And you learn things that you would not have ever expected. Going back to that Lowe's campaign you just mentioned, I think we had one for O'Reilly Auto Parts. It was the same thing, where they had this creative that was meant for men, but that was the creative that women were responding to, and they were learning a little bit about their female audience that they had taken for granted, or that they had made some wrong assumptions about, and they learned, and they were able to increase their conversions because of that.
Exactly.
So don't be afraid to experiment. Don't throw everything at an experiment, but never just get too comfortable. Yes, this is working. I'm not going to change anything.
Yes.
So now we get to the final, arguably the most important, which is the results. So we're looking at this is lookalike audience targeting. So this is just one of the benefits of doing an email capture campaign, like we showed you for Pepsi. In addition to being able to, say, send newsletters, which of course is something you want to do if you have an opt-in email database, what you're going to also want to do is ingest those emails. You can now serve those emails display ads. You now have a much higher, you have your audience advocates. You have people you know are engaged, who you know like your brand. And you can actually, we can actually ingest those emails and serve display ads in social media and on the web to specifically those people, to specifically those email addresses. And what's more, you can take that email database and create a lookalike audience, meaning you look at all these intangibles in terms of Google, Facebook. There's a lot of data on the web that can connect an email address. It's a little bit scary to all kinds of metadata about that person. And so if you have a big enough email database, you can get some really effective trends that you would not have ever thought about in your audience in terms of their interests, who they are, where they are, what they do, what they like, and suddenly you're targeting an audience that looks like that. It creates kind of your fictional persona of your audience and people who look like that, people who are like that. So even if they don't necessarily fit the demographic profile, they're like your audience in so many ways that it's worth serving ads to them. And actually, surprisingly, that tends to work better than demographic targeting, than all that stuff that creates the little boy for audience profile that I keep going back to in this talk. Lookalike audience profile is more real and tends to perform about a third better. And then, of course, there's all the great business intelligence, the audience insights that you're going to get. You're going to get who, what, where, when, what are the age groups, what are the gender, all the things that flow through Google Analytics or whatever your analytics platform is. And then, of course, bounce rate, session duration, and specifically what they're engaging with. The nice thing about running an interactive campaign like the Pepsi one with the spinner and the coupons is there's all these points of conversion. There's all these engagement events that we can track for the client. So we can actually see who is engaging with what and how and where they're coming from. And so maybe you're getting a lot of clicks from one place, but those people aren't doing anything. You can actually see where your valuable audience is coming from. And you can see, so here's an example of a kind of results we can show for a client. Break it down by gender. So in this case, we were targeting women, and obviously that was working. But not only were we targeting getting more traffic from women, we're getting higher conversion rates in general from women. So you also see that women are not only clicking on the ad, but they're actually converting. So you want to track the whole funnel, not just that click.
Yep.
And then, of course, the last step is to take all this great information you've learned and plug it into the next campaign.
Right back into your master plan.
Right back into your master plan, and it becomes this big cycle that feeds itself and gets better and better and better as you go. The more you learn, the bigger your audience gets, the better your insights get, the better that first step gets, and then the better you're able to optimize, and you generate lots and lots of ongoing performance, and things just keep getting better and better.
Exactly.
So that takes us to the end of the presentation. Open it up now for questions. I think we went a little bit long, almost at the half-hour mark, but we'll open it up for probably about 5 minutes here for questions. So we have one right here. What is bid factoring? So we had those couple slides on bid factoring, Matt. You want to handle that?
Sure. So bid factoring is something that you can utilize. It depends either on how you set up and optimize your campaign or which platform you're using. So, for example, one of the bigger DSPs out there, Trade Desk, is huge on bid factoring. And what it allows you to do is once you have identified those clusters, say women on Wednesday between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., it allows you to multiply your bid during those peak hours for that gender. So, for example, if you have a bid set for, let's say, $2 to win a display ad, if it is a display ad that is being served to a known female between these hours, you can set it to multiply your base bid by an X. So, for example, if that audience has shown to be twice as likely to convert, you can change your base bid up to 4 during those peak hours. So what that allows you to do is it takes these factors, these now tangible factors, and puts them into kind of a higher bidding segment. And so when those impressions come available, you are more likely to win that bid to get more views of your target audience.
So the version for people like me who don't do this really is bid factoring is you assign a list of factors that will impact the amount that you're bidding and your likelihood of winning certain bids for inventory when you're serving digital ads on different websites and mobile apps.
Yes. So there are platforms out there that can do this for you, similar to Trade Desk, where once you've identified those pockets, you set your X factor or your bid factor of how many times more valuable this audience is versus your normal audience, and it will do it for you. If you are doing it kind of the longhand way, it's up to you to kind of segment out your different campaigns. So maybe you have a campaign that ran Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then you realize that peak hours were lunch hours on those days. You can then untarget those for your regular campaign, create a duplicate line item targeting the same audience, but then only target it during those times that you segmented out of your original campaign.
Okay.
So you can bid higher or adjust your budget that way.
All right, let's move on to the next question here. How do you know who's converting? So we were saying tracking, redemptions and conversions, and we want to optimize for conversions, not for clicks. How do we actually know that? That's a good question.
How do we actually know who's converting?
Yeah.
So there are a handful of ways that we can do it. When it comes to, say, a CRM where you're doing an email blast, FunMobility has the capability of doing a very unique, a one-to-one unique URL for everybody in that database. So you can see literally which customer is engaging and exactly how much. So that is the most targeted or most granular way that we can track that. The second most granular way would be the household targeting that Kevin had mentioned, where we ingest a list of physical addresses and then we target those houses. We know that we only targeted those houses, and anybody engaged was at least in one of those houses, and you should be able to track within that audience an idea of how many people are converting.
Going back just a sec real quick, so what you were just talking about, I think is an important point to bring up, about dynamically generated URLs. So one of the cool things about our platform is that we do this dynamically generated URL, meaning that even though they're, at the end of the day, going to click through to the same landing page, regardless of if they come in from different ads, email, whatever, they're going to be served a different URL. The FunMobility platform automatically generates a different URL string for every unique person. That happens automatically. And so even if you come in through a banner ad, dynamically generates a unique URL just for that person. So then if they fill out a form, we can then say this person clicks on a banner ad, comes to the landing page, fills out a form, gives us their email, gives us their name, takes some sort of action, goes to the e-commerce site, gets a coupon, downloads, some product recommendation, piece of content, watches the video, whatever the campaign is about, and we can say it was this person with this information that we captured who did this. And that's because we're serving that unique URL to that person who came in through a banner ad.
Exactly. And then so the highest level, which we talk about on another webinar as well, is using UTM parameters, where you're similar to doing the unique URL or the dynamic URL that we generate on a one-to-one basis with who we're serving to. The UTM URL is driving an infinite number of people to the same landing page, but by using the 5 parameters that you are granted, you can then segment, okay, so it was this platform, this creative, which obviously was served to these people. So you can tell that at least on a creative level, and if you know where that creative is being served, whether it's a site list, whether it's Facebook, etc., that is the highest level of how you can tell who is converting.
All right, so the idea basically being we use event tracking to track the actual conversion events on the site. And then this is one step up from the individual level. This is now on the source level.
Yes.
So everybody who came in through a specific source, a specific creative, a specific marketing channel, via news, paid search, paid, social media, in-app display ads, whoever came in from those points, we can segment down and say this is where the valuable traffic is coming from. Not where the traffic is coming from, but where the valuable traffic is coming from, where people who are actually converting on specific events are coming from.
Exactly. And it's also in that post-click through GA, where if GA, Google being Google, if GA knows that it's a female or a male or an age, a certain age, within a certain age bracket, or has an affinity for clicking on, animal ads or school ads for higher education, etc., those types of data points are being captured in GA, and then we're able to attribute that. Again, using that UTM parameters, we're able to attribute, people looking at colleges are highly likely to engage on this on a Friday at midnight.
Anybody who wants to know more about UTM parameters, we have an ebook available at funmobility.com/resources called Optimizing Mobile Content for Google Analytics. You want to check that out. We also talk about this topic a little bit more in detail on an upcoming webinar. One of these weekly webinars that we cycle through, the topic is Insights Analytics Reporting. I think it's called 360 Audience Insights. So if you want to register for that, you can check that out. Which I think I'm going to segue here. We're about 35-minute mark, so we went a little over. But if you have any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to email me. You can reach me at marketing@funmobility.com. course, if you have any sales inquiries, email sales@funmobility.com. And if you want to learn more, we have all kinds of great resources at funmobility.com/resources, ebooks and webinars. And we do these weekly webinars every week, different topic every week for marketing and advertising, and with a rotating series of guest hosts. So be sure to check it out again. Next week, we're going to be talking about mobile-first CRM. So we're going to be talking about how to look at your mobile-first audience. And let's be honest, today's audiences are mobile-first audiences. Your brand is mostly on digital. Digital is mostly on mobile at this point. So what are the considerations for having a good CRM strategy on mobile? That's next week. And once again, a recording of this presentation will be sent out to everyone who attended and everyone who wasn't able to attend. That will be going out tomorrow morning. Thank you, Matt, for helping out today, and thank you, everybody who attended. Hope you all have a great week, and I hope to see you all again soon.